I have hand-selected 2,800 photos from Google Earth and the internet that I would want with me at the ready in the Grand Canyon. Fair use for copyrighted materials allows for comment, criticism, research, and education. I've included a link in my Google Drive so others can have this information that is freely circulated on the web. What I have done is just put that information in an orderly digital guide that can supplement your hard copy guide to the Grand Canyon. I'm seeking no compensation or credit for any images that I have compiled. It took 3 months and over 200 hours to put this together for the Grand Canyon, yet it can be fully accessed in 3 hours or just 3 minutes if needing information about a rapid or a certain camp. It is common in the Grand Canyon for groups to stop scouting. This digital guide allows you to bring up the next rapid and scout it from the aerial image you hold in the palm of your hand in perhaps under 10 seconds. Let's start in. First off is the put-in. So if you've never been to the Grand Canyon, or if you're doing a multi-day trip of any sort, you kind of want to know what the put-in looks like. It just makes your life a whole lot easier. So there's the main boat ramp. This gives some information. This is the area where you rig your gear. Most people do trips where a company helps them rig for them, so that's where everything's going to be, or this is where you're going to set up. So the boat camp is just 100 yards float downriver. So you get your boats all rigged, you move them down there, and that's the first night's camp. So on Google Earth, there was one group in particular that kind of took photos of each night's camps. So that's kind of what these photos are, so I did include those. National Geographic had on-water footage, so that's kind of on-water footage. The guidebook that I used was the main guidebook for the Grand Canyon, so a very common one that everyone uses. I kind of more information on that later. But yeah, so the rock types. So in the guidebook, they'll be like, hey, this is a new rock type. So I included those photos as well. I included every single rapid. So even this, even a scale 1 Paria riffle, I included. And if I could get other photos, I included those as well. This was from the National Geographic, their trip down, so I could get an on-water picture above every rapid. So then you kind of get to see your way down there. I also took over aerials of the major drainages. So that's the Paria River. There's not too many. There's like 4 or 5, 6 main drainages of the Grand Canyon. They put a lot of water in, but they're very significant from the size of the drainages, the watersheds that feed the Grand Canyon. So if you have rain, within 100 miles or whatever, some of those drainages, like the Paria River, that can run, that's always running pretty brown. And then so it kind of mixes in. All right, kind of the first thing you come to is this Cathedral Wash Rapid. You can maybe do a little hike up Cathedral Wash, but pretty nice little warm-up. And even these warm-ups, they got some good waves in them. I had a 10-foot boat, so it was good for me to get my bearing. Okay, more different sands, rock types. Navajo Bridge. So this is at the 4-mile mark. You have to get past Navajo Bridge your first day. It seems like, oh, that's not a big deal. There's no, put it this way, there's no camping above Navajo. You have to camp below that bridge. And but it was an issue for me because I did not have an adequate groover system for a toilet at the put-in. And I was looking at driving to Flagstaff to actually get something that would work. But luckily, the other trip, they chose Mo and Kopi, and they outfitted their entire trip, and sure enough, they had an extra groover. So I rented one from them on the spot. So always good to have, even on these bigger trips, you might want to take collectively about $1,000 with you. I had a few hundred in my car, so that was very nice to hand over some pocket cash to make this trip work. All right, some aerial footages. We're getting to the first rapid Badger. I do those, you know, I like to do the full aerial so you can kind of see kind of what the different canyons look like. So this is marble, kind of plateaued on either side and then cut down in. Now with this Badger, you know, you probably want to, you know, if this is the rapid that you want to scout, great. But the cool thing about having these pictures along with you is that, you know, you can see where the line is and see where the holes are. Sometimes that's easier said than done because your line is left of center, but it's really easy to be pretty centered in this rapid and go into that top hole, which can cause you a lot of headache, flip your boat. Anytime you're flipping your boat, you might get broken up, you know, you can break a bone. So that can really put a damper on a trip. So making sure you run this Badger Canyon is, Badger Rapid is very important. I stayed at Jackass Camp, so here's some really nice kind of, yeah, really nice camp, Jackass, highly recommend it. Even hiked up the canyon a little bit. Some pretty cool canyon walls in there. So as many photos as I could, I put in this thing, you know, so if, mainly from Google Earth, you could, so I use kind of Google Earth as my, you know, for the aerials, but then even there you can pull up pictures that are located to that place. And so I added those into this collective archive. So you have this kind of digital archive of the entire Grand Canyon. Alright, so Soap Creek. So that last one was, you know, so from like 10 Mile Rock to Soap Creek, I kind of added those aerials in so you could, you know, if you're not following along with the guidebook, you can still use this digital document as kind of like a one and done if you wanted to. And anytime there's like, you know, some of the aerials where you have boats at a camp or even these pictures of the camp, it's probably a good camp. You know what I mean? It's like probably a camp that a lot of people go to. The commercial outfitters know about, maybe for its size and just in, you know, overall comfort and enjoyableness. Now Soap Creek. Now one thing I want to mention is Badger, Soap, you know, especially these two rapids. Treat them like, you know, class 4+ Western Mountain Rivers. You know, they're steep. Come to the top, and this one's long. You know, I actually, you know, thought this one was a little bit easier than Badger, but it had some big waves in it that I thought I was going to get flipped on and really had the high side. You know, with an 18-foot boat, probably not too big of a deal, but just know, you know, bring your A game for these first two. You know, depending on if this is kind of like your first day. But the nice thing is Badger and Soap gives you that nice warm-up as well. If you treat them seriously, you pick your line, make sure you stay away from any really kind of pour-over-ish holes or just kind of, you know, shallow features in there. But you're really trying to get your crew dialed in for House Rock Rapid because that is, you know, kind of your first must-make move and your bigger moves for a rapid. Alright, so anytime I came to a canyon, I really wanted to do a shot up the canyon so you get a general idea of kind of what that river view is. It was really important to me to do aerials of every canyon and every drainage because some are small, especially lower down. You know, some just kind of dead end at the south rim, just like, you know, kind of 1 mile up. And then others run long. You know, towards the end of the trip, Separation Canyon, some of those large ones, you know, kind of every large canyon at the end of the kind of the Grand Canyon are very lengthy drainages. And so I have every camp in here, got an aerial of the camp. You know, sometimes a couple, like this one is a ledge kind of system, and then some of these on-water photos. You know, even a couple if it's not too obvious. And yeah, the guidebook says, and the guidebook only can provide, a couple sentences on some of these camps, like small, medium, like popular, unpopular. But this digital, having digital photos of these, you can size those last 3 camps up and say, hey, we're gonna camp on a ledge, and let's try that last one. Like, I think we can have an enjoyable time. And I definitely recommend trying some of those ledge camps. If everyone, you know, it's good for your crew to have like cots to sleep on, because then you don't have to have flat sand every single camp, and that can give your group a little more options. Yeah, and some of these camps are more popular because they have overhanging cliff walls. You can put like your kitchen underneath there. You can get away from the elements, and that can be useful for hot weather and cold weather. Hot weather, you get the shade. Cold weather, rain, you can get some protection from the elements. Okay, we're approaching House Rock Rapid. Now, some of these rapids have canyons that aren't named. So House Rock Rapid has Ryder Canyon, kind of coming in from that north side. Scout for this has 2. You can scout on the right or the left. I chose to scout river left because the water's pretty placid above this rapid, where you can get a quick scout on the left side, push off, and then you're kind of set for your move to go from left to right. But these aerials really give you a better view of like the actual move you have to make. Some of these on-water photos are also valuable to kind of put the whole picture together. And I was able to pull some more off the internet. Yeah, so here's the river right scout. And the river left is kind of just a one and done. Pull in, pop up on some rocks, take a good look. So that might be an easier scout if everyone's feeling pretty comfortable and dialed in. If you need to like walk the length of the rapid, obviously that river right side is the way to go. But that rapid, the move is at the top anyway. So if you mess that up, you really don't need to look what's downstream. You're gonna run into some big features. Okay, yeah, another camp with some ledges, so it's good to have those photos in there to be like, hey, I can actually locate it on the water, and hey, are we going to camp there or not? This digital guide is great for planning the camps that you want to stay at when planning a trip, and also learning about all the rapids that you should know before going down. Also, while down in the Grand Canyon, you can pull this out, and within 15 to 20 minutes, go through your next day. And I highly recommend you use this guide above each rapid. Pulling this out allows you to see the aerial view of the rapid, what line to take, what feature it has, whether you scout or not. The guidebook I used was the Guide to the Colorado River and the Grand Canyon by Tom Martin. It's a river maps, so that's basically where I got all my river mileage and wanted to compile all the photos, for that. And this concept is kind of the missing link to guidebooks. Guidebooks aren't able to give, tons of pictures and overhead pictures. So that's the real benefit to having these digital photos on hand. And the other benefit is just to have these photos so you can go through them yourself and get more information before you go down the Grand Canyon for the first time, or as a refresher to, oh yeah, this is kind of the order of all the rapids in the Grand Canyon. So North Canyon, I kind of found that rapid to be fairly straightforward, so that was kind of nice. Just, you know, fun big waves. I stayed at that at the bottom of North Canyon Camp right there. That's the upper camp, and I must have been pretty tired, I guess. Long day. I didn't really. I don't remember hiking too much up North Canyon. I guess I did a little bit, but not very far. So yeah, good views of the camps in this lower North Canyon. Tons of room, tons of big beach. Yeah. Another overview to this next rapid. Now we're into the roaring 20s. The rapids are kind of shorter, but big eddy lines at the bottom. So these overhead views really get to see, you know, that eddy on the right basically goes all the way to the top of the rapid. I mean, that eddy on the right is above the main first wave. You know, it's lower than the tongue is lower. So that's what you're going to notice there, that you really don't want to get kicked into those eddies, depending on, you know, pretty much all flows. But I was kind of at higher flows, and those eddy lines were pretty pushy. So yeah, a couple different views of the camps. And this is important. You want to know kind of what the camp looks like. So getting that river view of like, oh yeah, that's a great backdrop. Like, I want to camp there. Indian Dick. This is going to be one that can flip boats. You know, pretty easy to locate with that feature right there. But just big lateral. First huge wave, big lateral. So there you go. You got a flip boat. And then look at this. You can be to the right side of it, or you can be the left side. You're thinking, yeah, I want to miss it to the left. Sure. But hey, you can miss a big feature to the right. So if you take a big feature, it's got like one little angry part, but usually to the right of that where you think it's going to be even more nasty is like, you know, you can probably pop up and over that. You just don't want to be kind of running away from it and then, you know, getting tagged by it. It'll flip you over. So yeah, so Lone Cedar Camp, that looks pretty nice. And then just depending on kind of what time of year you're going down, is it you know, July heat, or is it you know, February and March where it's a lot cooler. So that kind of determines what kind of camps you're going to look for. But yeah, these Georgie. So yeah, really good hits in there. And these are fun. The Roaring 20s, you know, really short, steep rapids, big eddies on the bottom, but that gives you the view. You know, just one or two moves to get through. Kind of a quick setup. Real fun. Not too intimidating. But some of these have holes up top. So this next rapid will have a hole on the upper, you know, left-hand side of it. And, you know, the guidebook just says, hey, watch out for a hole on the upper left. Well, you know, you might tag that thing. You know, so there's the hole right there. I got pretty close to it, and I was at a little higher flow than that. And yeah, it looked a little juicy, like it was going to munch you. So just having an aerial or an overhead view of a rapid is so great. I always put my aerials, so the rapid is starting at the bottom, going to the top, because that's how. See, on the river, this is how you're going to see every rapid. You're going to be at the top of it, looking kind of down it. So that's kind of how you're going to look at these rapids. A lot of people will, they think, oh, when I'm scouting, I'm going to look at the rapid from the side, and that's the view but it's kind of hard. The best view is an overhead view, and then have it oriented so you're looking kind of down, like you would be running the rapid. So that's a low water camp option. This is kind of where that low water camp is. So obviously that was, maybe the water was too high. It kind of got washed out right there. But at least you have those camps. And yeah, really fascinating drainages. So you got, Tiger Wash. Some of them, you really can't hike up, but they're just kind of neat to kind of take in. Yeah, so great day hike, Shinumo Wash. I don't think I did this one, so I would have kind of missed out on that. Pretty neat in there. But that's the cool thing. Now that you have the photos, you're like, hey, we're not missing that. It's coming up. Worth the stop. It's only a quick hike up into that canyon. Kind of one of my favorite. All my favorite rapids are the ones where you got cliffs. That's always super fun. And then that looks like an excellent camp. So Shinumo Wash Camp, can't go wrong there. Pictures worth whatever words. And that overhead view, that really gets you able to see how much sand is available, how much flat spots. Are we going to fit our entire group? So I kick out on those aerials, so you have the South Canyon, one of the larger drainages. I want you to see kind of how it's related to the entire north section of the Grand Canyon, or like the North Rim. Because once you're down here, this is all you see. You see canyon walls, and what's beyond it. Sometimes you don't need to worry about it, but just for your knowledge and education, it's pretty cool to kind of know how these drainages are formed, and kind of where they're located. So Stanton's Cave. So if I found some pictures on the internet, so these are all copyrighted by individuals, but just it's great to have just for your education, and just really nice to have in this compilation of digital images. And these overhead views, really, so you can kind of see how Redwall Cavern kind of formed on an outside bend. And just kind of carved that feature out of there. So pretty impressive here. So yeah, a couple of camps down here. Would you want to camp there? Pretty small, but at least with a digital picture, you can give these camps a chance, So instead of just going by them, you'd be like, hey, I want to camp there. I have a small group, and it fits what we're gonna do. But obviously, having all these photos, you can see, yeah, Nautiloid Camp looks excellent. And even a cool lunch spot. So this is in the guidebook. Kind of a dry waterfall, some shade. And then here's what it looks like from the river view. So pretty cool spot. And in the guidebook, you have bridge of size, so you can use that feature to locate this cliff wall. And it's just kind of nice to, not miss out on some things. And just to give yourself some education before you go down there. So you're like, oh, I know exactly where that feature is. All right, and so even this camp, the guidebook will have a river view, so you can locate the camp. But, for those drainages, do you really know kind of the size of the drainages? Because, some of these are kind of small, so you kind of want to have that over, the aerial view of the drainages. All right, so that was the proposed dam sites right here. All right, hey, so that looks like a decent camp, Lower Buck Farm. And this is just good education for me to, go through and, see the order of all the river features, whether they're rapids or camps. This would be, I think as river runners, we're all trying to be better guides. You know, uh, and then so, any education that we can get to help us out, to know where we are, gain information, and you're just able to share that so much better. Um, because there's locations in the Grand Canyon, there's not, from here, there's not very many rapids after Redwall Cavern. So then what happens is you kind of, uh, blank out about, what's in the next 20 miles, from here to the lower Colorado. But one of the main, this is really cool. This is one of the only goosenecks in the Grand Canyon, President Harding's Rapid. Um, kind of a tricky move right here. Really strong boil lines. I kind of got tossed around. I only had a 10-foot raft, but I felt like I was getting sucked under. So really trying to hang on to my boat here. Yeah, and a really cool camp on that outside left bend. And, one of the places I really want to go to is actually the goosenecks in the San Juans. I've never gone, but if you see any of these cool aerials of like really huge goosenecks, you're like, oh, that looks like the Grand Canyon. Well, no, it's the San Juan. So it's a tributary of the Grand Canyon. But those goosenecks are main from there. But yeah. goosenecks are cool because they really, I mean, they're very self-evident of how that was formed. You know, it's an exchange, it's an energy exchange in the river. You know, going from a river that's able to course downstream to one that's not, and a river that has the opportunity to turn sideways. It's very impressive because it can only turn sideways for so long before it, you know, carves and also dissipates that energy. So there's a cool little hike there. And I have a couple of these hikes in there. You know, now you have a digital reference of where these hikes are. You're like, oh, you can hike from that camp. You know, I don't have what I do have of everything is the camps and the rapids. And so there are some extras. Definitely Havasu. I have digitized the entire hike up Havasu and around Deer Creek too. So if you want to do the Deer Creek crossover up the Thunder River, you won't get lost, you know, because once you're on the plateau, you'll have pictures of that. So that'll be later on. So camps, rapids, but also canyons. I really want people to, you know, for myself, I want to know exactly what these canyons look like. You know, I got to meet one of the guides down there, and, you know, a gal gets to run the river, you know, many times that she wants to in a lifetime. But she still has, you know, on her bucket list some of these canyons. Hey, I want to explore that. And, you know, in a river, you're not going to get lost, but what's going to happen is you're just going to boat right by stuff that might be cool. And, you know, if your guidebook doesn't say, hey, stop and get out, then you might not. So just having, and this isn't, I mean, it's pretty darn comprehensive. But yeah, it is just helping you get enticed to know where all the goods are. Good camps and maybe some good hikes. And if it's the heat of the summer, you know, either roll into these camps late at night, or like they don't have shade. So, you know, you might, well, you know, there's always some when there is shade, there's shade. But some are more exposed than others, so it's always good to see what camps are less exposed. If that's what you're looking for. And that river view of the camp really gives you like, hey, you know, is this camp, I mean, does that look like a desirable place? Well, comparatively, you know, maybe not. You know, downriver there might be, you know, a cool little nook. You know, so one, I'm giving these camps, you know, the smaller ones, you know, at least you can see what they look like. And some might fit your fancy, but then others, you know, you can not mess up and choose a camp that you don't want to camp at. You know, making sure every camp is just awesome, because that's really, it's a big part of your trip down there, making sure, you know, you're enjoying your time. I only had one bad camp, and that was below Diamond Creek, and obviously that section of the canyon is all washed out and has huge silt banks. But yeah, it was miserable. And if I had and I didn't have very good digital. I only took black and white copies, and and it was very hard to locate. So with these color, and if you have a smartphone, you can just pick them right up, and you can locate exact locations of the camps, and that's very important. If I had that from Diamond down, I could have done better and made my experience down there a lot better. Okay, the Granary. So this is something I did not do. You know, I did this solo and did it in August and had to wear my dry suit like all day. So if it was a little bit of a hike, if I couldn't do the hike at night, you know, I'm not taking off my dry suit. And so I missed out on the granaries. You know, that's something where I'd like to go back maybe with a group of people do these April trips. This might have been, a March or even February trip. But, when you got a lot more weather, it opens up the opportunities to hike. But yeah, so here's the trail to the granaries. So yeah, if you wanted to hike to the granaries with those photos that you saw before, one was an overview, so you could find the trails, you can find them fast, you know where to dock your boats. There's a couple locations to hit those granaries from the different camps. So you can not be in people's way. You can kind of see how the trail spider web, and but then you can actually find your way to the top there. And there's just a lot of stuff you can't memorize. You could look at that camp, Quagnut Camp or this camp, and I'm just not going to memorize exactly what this looks like. Unless it's just a bomb camp. Like the ones that I remember are like, there's like there's one called like the kitchen, and then next to the football field, Panko's kitchen, like that is pretty much one of the cooler ones. The football field seems cool because you have the entire sandy beach at your disposal. But yeah, so a lot of these camps, you're not gonna memorize them. So one, it's good just to have this digital slide go. It's 3 hours worth of digital pictures. Obviously, the intent isn't for you to sit here and look at these all, but it can give you some knowledge on kind of the order of the camps and the river features, which again makes you a better guide. Because yeah, even watching some of YouTube videos of some of the guides in the Grand Canyon, give their little spiel, they kind of know where, they at least know the order of the rapids. And I would have to have a guidebook, so that's impressive. Even some of these guides, it might be, they've only gone down the river like 2 or 3 or 4 times before having to guide people down, and that's not very many times to actually figure out the order of the rapids, where, you'd probably want a little cheat sheet. You get to the point where you kind of, know what's in the rapid and the features, but you just don't know the order. So we're quickly approaching the iconic drainage of the Colorado, which is the Little Colorado. So this thing flows pretty much turquoise blue. Unless there's a drop of rain within a 500-mile radius, then it will not be turquoise. So don't get your hopes up too high. Always come back, do it again if you're not able to swim in turquoise water. I was definitely not. It was running brown. And just something to be said, that last 30 miles, that's a hard 30 miles to memorize. There wasn't very many rapids, and so just kind of keep that as a mental note. Even if you go through that section, more and more, it's hard to get things to stick if you don't have something one right after another that captures your attention. All right, so the Little Colorado is a drainage that comes in on River Left. There's only two main drainages that come in on River Left throughout the entire Grand Canyon. So you have the Little Colorado, and then much, much farther downstream, you have Havasu coming in. So these are the drainages that actually put water into the Colorado. So they're from that perspective, they are significant and important. And that's why I do those aerial views, so you can, you know, really get a feel for what's important. Even the smaller drainages, sure, those are important, but definitely know your big drainages coming into rivers. And I think this shot right there shows, you know, the Little Colorado coming in. And this is the first section, like the right of that photo, where the Colorado River is completely blown out. So that's very significant. You know, I do my own kind of guesswork on kind of the eroding and the formation of the Colorado just from like river features. You can look at aerial views of the Colorado and just treat it like a smaller river and see kind of how it carved itself out, and it can kind of tell you a more predictable story, I feel. Some of that stuff you kind of got to keep to yourself because, you know, you're not a geologist, but it's just kind of intuitiveness that you're trying to make, you know, put some of the pieces of the puzzle together, which I find very fascinating. Alright, so you definitely want to do this. It's a lot of fun. Turn your body into a boat. Alright, so that was the Little Colorado. And the Little Colorado, there might be hiking, you know, up there. I just didn't spend a lot of time doing that. I don't know what the regulations are on that. And I just don't know how far you can go explore. So, but all I know is just kind of a great lunchtime destination, that's for sure. And yeah, some of these other creeks and canyons, you know, some of them might be good for hiking. You know, we're going to come to one where it's a lava canyon. So you have lava rapids. So there's a rapid, you know, just called lava, and lava canyon. And it's a great spot to do a layover, to do hiking. So this Carbon Canyon may be the same. Okay, but so yeah, here's Lava Canyon. Yeah, and I saw this group kind of set up and camped, and I was like, oh, I wonder if they're just all sleeping. I didn't see anyone, but you know, I didn't do much research on hiking, so my brain wasn't big enough to figure out like, oh yeah, they're just on a day hike. I just figured it was 100 degrees out. Why would you want to be hiking? But that's just me. But yeah, good to know. Lava Canyon, do a layover day. Check out some really good hikes, I guess. Okay, yeah, Lava Canyon or Char Rapids. So that's good to know. So, you know, it probably gets confused with Lava Falls, you know. Or just doesn't get much attention because it shares a name. So this overview, yeah, that looks like not a very desirable camp. So it's just good to have these so you can be like, yeah, that doesn't look like the best camp. Good to know. Moving on. And the other element that this digital, photo does is that, kind of the river changes pace every like 20 miles. So if you're going to boat a 20-mile day, you can kind of maybe skip some of the sections, as, like on purpose to go from like one cool area to another, and maybe kind of skip some of these areas. But my next camp is just actually past Tanner, and I recommend it. It was one that this other guide I was talking to was like, oh yeah, I've never seen one camp there, and it was really nice. So Tanner, probably a very popular place, big. Sky's the limit on that, right? But that's kind of that's where the camp is, kind of front and center. That kind of looks overgrown. So I'm going to show you Basalt Camp. It was really nice. It was like you could take like an evening walk on the beach. You kind of had those big eddies. You kind of had those ocean waves kind of lapping up at shore. Just super nice. So that's Basalt. And just below Tanner. And I think it gave you kind of a better view. This whole area is like a huge amphitheater for some of these peaks. Just really popping up like, kind of like, it's like the Cathedral of the Grand Canyon. I kind of just make that up, I think, but... Tanner, it's a 4. It kind of seemed messy to me, so I didn't want to make any mistakes. Obviously, I'm in a 10-foot boat, so things are much different when you're an 18-foot boat, so you probably just think this is boring, but I swear, even some of the 4s I had to buckle up for. And yeah, so I stayed at Basalt. I was not going to hike up that canyon. You're not going to see anything interesting within a half a mile, so that's too much for me. But just really nice camp. I really enjoyed camping on that sandbar, kind of the top of the picture. Obviously on River Right, but kind of front and center now. That sandbar is really nice. But that's it. Kind of a desolate camp, but with that sandbar and the whole amphitheater effect, I really enjoyed camping there. So, thumbs up for that one. Furnace Flats, to my knowledge, it's kind of just an off limits area. No, can't pull over your boat. So, kind of just a restoration area of some sort. Whether it's archaeological, I kind of forget, but. But yeah, so you're coming up to, the Unkar Delta. So this whole, 20 miles kind of upriver, downriver is just really expansive. And that's kind of cool, even the Middle Fork in Idaho. Halfway down, it opens up and there's airfields and, you kind of feel like you're in ranch country, which is pretty cool. So this is kind of the similar on the Grand Canyon. Unkar Delta, just big expanse. Very, very neat in its own right. But I did get some of these aerials, so that's going to be kind of where the ruins are. I didn't know where they were. It's too hot for me to do any hiking. So it's just good that I put those in there, because had I had these photos of something like that, I could have been like, oh, that's 400 yards away. I'm going to get out of my boat, go check it out, and come back. And no matter what the temperature, you're going to be doing that in the Grand Canyon. Whether it's cold or hot, is it worth it to pull over? And if you're not quite sure, you might not. So to have this, have digital images that say, oh yeah, it's right there, let's do it, it looks awesome. So that's the difference. you know, some people say, I don't want to have any extra pictures because I just want to experience it. Well, then you might just boat by all this stuff, or it might be too hard to find, even if the guidebook says to stop there. So that last rapid Unkar is supposed to be one of the longer ones, and I didn't find it too difficult, so simple. Oh yeah, so I camped at Basalt, but that put me perfect because I did like a 25 mile day. I actually had to get below Horn. So just know that you know you're gonna have, and this is a cool section because like I said, it was expansive, but in the next 5 miles, right at Neville's, you know, so you got Neville's Rapid. The rock type totally. So yeah, that photo right there, it looks like you're just going into a gorge. You know, it looks like a dead end. It's really cool. It's like you know, it's like a box. It's like a dead end canyon for the river, but the river flows through, obviously. And so this is the kind of the start of the Granite Gorge, like chiseling into that next rock type. River narrows, you know, especially when you get down there, but you still got to get through Hants. So you get through Hants, then after that, then the river narrows, and you go through Sockdogler, all the way to Phantom Ranch. But I mention this is because you really have to time your camps right, you know, because you either have to camp much above Phantom Ranch or below Horn. So there's a section of river in there that you can't camp unless you're making a changeover. And they're very serious about it. So, you know, and you should just, you know, if that's the rules, you should definitely follow them, right? All right, Hans, mandatory scout on. So the scout is on the right, pretty easy. I mean, for my one boat, I could just pull in. But if you got a line of boats, you might want to like slowly figure that out. Have one go ahead, find the scouting eddy, you know, and help the other boats in. Because it's fairly placid, you know, like on the shore. But you still have current moving. And you want to make sure everyone gets to that scout. And there you go, Hans Camp. That's not my deal. I'm not going to camp above a big old rapid and then run it first thing in the morning. So you'll have to figure that out with your group, whether that's a good idea or not. There you go, and you got the whole topo. You know, everyone fears that right side, but yeah, there's some nasty little holes in there. So definitely tend towards the left, for sure. But you know, having a topo, maybe it's not the end of the world if you kind of know what you're getting into. I find it really difficult to get left on that rapid, so I luckily in the middle hit some of those big waves, caught laterals, so that's kind of in the video footage that I took of the canyon. All right, so now some of these steep canyons coming in, kind of like steep tributaries. Like hanging tributaries just right from the river. And Sockdogler. So yeah, big feature in Sockdogler. Definitely can flip a boat because it's kind of off angle on the left side. Yeah, and I wouldn't pass up some of these camps. If I did it different, I would have camped, in the Granite Gorge, this Grapevine camp. How cool is it to be right in the heart of the gorge? Um, just fantastic. It was so hot that I just really had to be on the water and then had to get off at night, so I was doing 20-mile days. And so, yeah, I made it past Horn. Because once you get past, like, Grapevine, you can't camp if you're not picking up someone at Phantom Ranch. Like, only these camps are, and even that Grapevine camp, that might have been only for people picking up or dropping off at Phantom Ranch. So that is one of the regulations in this gorge, is camping is only limited at a certain river mile to people that are dropping off and picking up. But yeah, super fun rapids, I think Grapevine is pretty much just read and run and fun. But it's good to have that picture of what the rapid looks like at the top, so you can use that with the aerial to be like, yep, I want to be over there, and that's what it's going to look like. So if you ever taking a river running class, they talk about worms, and one of them is, just your markers. That's the M in worms. So you know where you're at. This is kind of a one-hit wonder, but this is where I flipped 83. There's a pretty juicy wave in there, I guess. No, I did not flip here. But yeah, there's a really good hit. See, and it's good to provide commentary and for me to go through this because, like, I get to run the river again. And you know what? I'm going to go, after this, I'm going to go see, like, what river miles you can't camp at. And then that's going to be burned into my brain, like, a little bit more. Then you can kind of memorize that. You can put that piece away as memory. And this Granite Gorge is so tight, that is all you're going to see of the canyon, and it's right at the top of the rapids, so, like, cool. So it's nice to have kind of that overview of, like, how big is that drainage? Coming off that, like, north rim flank. And actually, this might be the one I'm thinking about. It has a decent wave. The 85 has a really nice hit, so there's some pretty fun stuff in there. And then I kind of didn't mention Sock Doggler in there, but yeah, that's in the Granite Gorge. That is one that you're gonna definitely want to miss one of the big waves in there. Can definitely tip your boat over. But Phantom Ranch, this is gonna give you the full overview. So there you got the North Rim. On the right, you have the whole Bright Angel Canyon. So the Bright Angel Trail is on South Rim and the North Rim. So the Bright Angel Rim extends both directions, but here you have Bright Angel Canyon. And that thing's like 14 miles long. The trail might be 14 to 16 miles average from the bottom of the canyon to the very top in the North Rim. But yes, there's you Boulder Beach, and then this is your hike up. If you want to go to the store. So I didn't want to take off my dry suit, so I just get wet and I'm starting to walk and, 100 degrees out. I made it to, kind of halfway. I got to like the ranger station. I didn't walk to the cantina. It's not that far, But here you go. You got the cantina. Here's what it looks like. You know, if you're going down the Grand Canyon, you got a group. You should definitely stop here. Kind of fun to maybe chat with some people. But those photos, you know, it's going to be like a, you know, feel like a mile hike up there and a mile back. So definitely plan for that and take your time. And give yourself some time. Because the camping, you can't camp here, so you got to make it down to Horn. So, and there's plenty. There's like a YouTube story, you know, the family, they're like, oh, they asked to camp there. Well, don't put that on them. You already know you can't camp here, that you have to get past Horn. And yeah, Horn's gnarly, and it's nighttime. You don't want to mess up at Horn at 5 o'clock at night, you know, with like a small group where you're going to have to flip boats over. It's just intimidating. So, you know, spend your time at Phantom Ranch, but make sure you get to Horn at a decent hour, get through it, and give yourself at least that time of, you know, so you feel confident that there's enough daylight where you're not kind of pushing the limits there. All right, so here's Pipe Creek Canyon. This is where the Bright Angel Trail goes up the south rim, goes up the Pipe Creek. And then you have the, I'm sure it's called like Pipe Creek Camp, you know, kind of the halfway point before the South Rim. So I've hiked down there, and then I've hiked to the Plateau Point. It's a cool little hike where you can actually oversee Horn. So that was the first image of the Grand Canyon that I got to see close up a couple years before pulling a permit and running. And Horn's not a rapid to be underestimated. It is, I don't know, probably might be the most puckery rapid on the whole Grand Canyon. Just because you know you got to do lava, and I don't know, even upset you can kind of bang through. But this one you got to have a plan. At low water for sure. At high water you got more options. You know, you don't want to get tipped over on those waves at the right, but at least you're not going to get, you know, broken up by like, you know, nasty holes. So yeah, a little higher flow. This is probably the flow I did, and you can actually go through the horns on the left there, so it kind of gives you that image of what you're going to see. And then I stayed at this first camp. So for a small camp, I really enjoyed this 91. Yeah, really a lot of solitude. Pretty sweet little beach, and you're just tucked in there. And I was felt pretty good about getting through Horn upright. And that was a great camp to start the rest of my next day. Yeah, you got 2 big days of floating. You know, from Hants down, you know, it might be a combination of 3. You can do Hants Camp and then do the Granite Gorge Camp, and then finish it out with, you know, getting all the way down to Hermit. And through Crystal, obviously. Yeah, Crystal, Hermit, and Granite Rapid. Obviously in reverse order there. All right, Granite. So yeah, these views kind of give you that, like, where is it located? The drainage, you know, you're not going to see that when you're boating by. So it's good to have these photos of kind of what everything looks like. I guess it really doesn't matter. I'm not a big fan of camping above a major rapid. That just sounds awful. I'd actually want to get through and then, you know, find a camp below a rapid. That makes more sense for me mentally. Nothing like ruminating over a huge rapid all night. But if you're with the group, you know, you're confident anyway. You got a lot of backup, safety. But yeah, having an aerial for granite, that really shows how to stay away from that right wall. And granite especially, you can easily stay away from that right wall like way early. So I mean, yeah, so you can be so far left. You know, compared earlier in the trip to house, house is really difficult. House rock, because you can't just be over on the right side. You'll get thrown to the left. So, but granite, man, you can be pretty darn left and just ride the entire thing out with a little bit of momentum. Instead of being too far right and then fighting to get left. So Hermit, this is one I wish I, just hit straight on. I tried to do a sneak down the left, and I'm happy with my decision. I flipped over, hung onto the boat, and picked up the pieces by about the tail of that rapid. But, there's nothing that's going to break your legs in there. So if you flip over and you're able to hold on to your boat, it's not a big deal just to get through there. But this is a rapid where, yeah, it only gets bigger towards the middle. So that middle feature, yep. And, yeah, if you hit some really high water, if they're doing a big release, that's what it's going to look like. And because this is a YouTube video, you're able to slow YouTube videos down. So if you're trying to follow, let's say you want to make this, twice as long, or like 4 times as, as slow pace. So you can actually get 4 times more visual of these pictures because you're going through it with your guidebook in your hand. There's always a feature for that on YouTube videos. You can slow the volume down half, 25%. So that's always an option there. And then you'll notice that I doubled up on the photos. So, this is the first time I've actually digitized using Photoshop. And, and I'll just take on the Grand Canyon instead of taking on a smaller river like the Middle Fork. But I did it. So I did the Grand Canyon. It was a crazy amount of time doing this. But then I realized the photos, once cropped and putting the title underneath them, it actually weirdly just shrunk the photo. It's like the same. It's these 2 photos that you see back and forth. They're the same. But in Photoshop, for whatever reason, it did not fill out the screen horizontally. I mean, I guess it fills out the screen vertically, but yeah, that's kind of a bummer. So then I just put in both photos. So if you're actually, you actually have to flip through twice as many. If I could do that differently, maybe I'd come up with something. But I actually kind of like this, where you actually get to see, you actually get to see the photo first, and then you're like, oh, what is that? It's like flashcards. You're like, oh, that's Crystal Rapid. All right, so that was the Scout of Crystal. This is definitely one you want to be in your A game. I kind of wasn't. I had really bad line, but I could, because the river was a little higher, where that hole, that crystal hole on the bottom right, was just a kind of a big wave, and I was like, oh, I could just run it. So I just got kind of complacent. I tried my best, but I definitely could have prepared way better and executed way better. But yeah, I actually did not flip, had a really good footage of me high siding, showing the capability of high siding. It was definitely not a hole like some of the holes in the Grand Canyon. No, they're gonna eat your lunch. But this turned out to be a wave like that. If I hit that square, I'd be toast. But what I hit was more of a wave. So that was nice to see. And I scouted. I scouted Crystal. I saw that it was a wave. I saw that it really didn't look like that. It was actually kind of like breaking every once in a while, like kind of curling. So I was like, you know what? It's not a big deal if I go into that. Because I knew my boat would flush. I knew it wouldn't be a big deal even if I did flip, I guess. That's what I was really worried about. One boat trip, I did not want to get separated from my boat. And so even a small tiny hole that's going to like eat you and then keep your boat, you know, I've done a lot of surf waves where like I'm surfing a wave, I flip, I swim, but the boat's still caught in it. And that separation, that's going to cause a lot of havoc because this river is so cold. And I did a lot of preparation. Oh, so here's tuna. All right, so you know, you get like you're trying to figure out all the rapids in the Grand Canyon. So obviously the you know, from Hermit down to Crystal, I mean, you should know like the back of your hand that you got Granite, Hermit, Crystal. But all right, so you got Tuna, Lower Tuna, Nixon Rock, and then so this is kind of the section of river that starts off the Gem series, where you have Agate, Sapphire, Emerald, you know. And then so like from from Hans down to Crystal, like you should know those rapids like the back of your hand, you know, most in kind of the order they go in. But then kind of the next major rapids as you get is the Gem series, which is right after Crystal. You got Crystal, Tuna, and then the Gems. And all the Gem rapids, they're sweet. They're kind of like the Roaring 20s. It gives you that feel like, oh, you know, I just went through some really, really hard rapids, and now kind of the fun begins, back to short-lived but really, really sweet rapids. Nixon Rock. Agate. Now this is just a 3, but these the next few pack a punch. I got flipped by, I think it was Emerald. River super narrow, so it's really hard to figure out where you are down in this section. And there's not much for camps, so you're kind of just hitting these rapids. You're trying to count them to figure out what rapid you're actually at. Yeah, so Emerald, I think I got that first wave on that side wave on the right hand, you know, kind of curler, tipped my boat over. And then, yeah, so Emerald, that's the one that flipped me, but Ruby is a really sweet rapid. It'll feel bigger than a Class 5 that it's rated, but really fun through there. And I guess depending on the water level, it was a little higher, so those rapids might get a little peakier. And Serpentine, that's a 7. I don't recall it being, I think it's pretty easy to read and run where you can stay, kind of in the middle and then get left and kind of avoid those waves on the right. So I think that one was fairly straightforward for me. All right, now we're coming up to another camp. So this has so you have Bass Camp. I guess this is the one above there. So I stayed at Bass Camp, which has the Ross Wheeler, which is really cool because you get to see the kind of the metal boat. Yeah, it took down the Grand Canyon. Kind of a little piece of history. And this is a classic rapid that, it's a 4, but hey, a quick topo. Look, you can go left or right, no big deal, right? Just don't go down the middle. There might be some shallowness on that shoal. But yeah, here's another view, either left or right. A lot of people go down that right-hand side. So yeah, that was a picture from, a hiker. So there's tons of hiking trails to get to some of these locations in the Grand Canyon. I don't have a lick of knowledge, on almost any of them except, from the North and South Rim. But yeah, I definitely want to expand my horizons, maybe get down to the Grand Canyon and go for a hike because, unless somebody's pulling a permit, it might be a once-in-a-lifetime trip down the Grand Canyon, but you might be able to go hiking every year. In some aspect of the canyon. Yeah, definitely read the Emerald Mile with Kenton Grua. It almost makes you more excited to do some of the hikes that he did than, recreate some of his river adventures. His hikes were amazing, shoeless. Kind of very adventurous. Oh, so here's one. So I did these larger aerials because Shinumo Creek actually kind of connects with one of the other drainages, so that's kind of important. Especially the way the Grand Canyon is formed, with big flood events. You get kind of canyons that kind of connected together, and especially with such a long period of erosion as this whole area uplifted, you could have had different water routes kind of scouring out side canyons that are offset to the main canyon, and it's very obvious with some of those, and I might point them out. Definitely not a geologist, but when you're running rivers your entire life, you kind of water flow is kind of intuitive. So if you kind of see something unique, hey, you got a little hypothesis, and if that's all it is, great. But yeah, it's definitely some pretty cool ways to look at things. Yeah, so that camp, you get an overview of that. It looked like it had a lot of sand and kind of maybe level spots to camp. So this is kind of where I got lost. So the guidebook, it's really hard to see kind of what drainages are coming in, what rapids, and I miscounted. I actually just blew by this scale 3 rapid, Acacia, and I didn't think anything of it. I didn't think it was a rapid actually, and I thought this next one was Acacia, class scale 4, and it was Waltenberg. And definitely don't underestimate Waltenberg because it's pretty featured. And it's maybe not one you're going to scout, it's kind of a read and run, but it's good to have these photos, kind of get the whole overview of what that rapid's going to look like. And don't use so the rapids are rated on a scale, but don't use that as a level of success, oh, I ran a 7, this is a 6, and so I can kind of put less effort, because that's where you're gonna run into mistakes. So I always thought oh, if it's a 6, just kind of double it, it's an 8 or a 7, at least 1, so you're actually putting more effort into the 5s and 6s, instead of just waiting for the 7s and 8s. And that's why I put all these photos together, because I just want people to be more educated. I want to educate myself more. This canyon's, there's so much to explore in this canyon. Just by knowing its basics, at least, is a great starting point that then you can, explore more. I think, maybe 20 years ago, you'd be like, well, why do I want to look at pictures when I go there, I'm going to see? But, I mean, here's a classic example. I thought this was Elf's Chasm or whatever. And so I hiked up to this draw, and it's pretty cool. You got this dry waterfall canyon, and I was just like, oh, this must be it. Well, no. I mean, that's kind of at the middle of your screen. That's the one I was at. And Elf's Chasm was, now down in this corner. Probably way more obvious, huge, creek coming in, and pretty obvious. And then, with this picture, you'd be like, oh, okay, I know exactly where I am. And with black and whites, I did not have that. So now that you have color digitals, you can easily find exactly where the Elves Chasm is. All right, so you got this big sandbar. Hey, if that's exposed, maybe that's a great place to camp. And now you have this river view of kind of what it looks like. That gives you a little more information of whether you'd want to try some of those smaller camps. Okay, Upper Blacktail Camp. This is where I stayed. Great little camp because you get to hike Blacktail Canyon kind of that evening. It's a larger camp, and I actually got there kind of set up, but there was this big commercial group that was kind of looking downstream, saw that I was there, and they camped at that opposite Blacktail, or the one just above it, whatever that was. So there are some camps in the Grand Canyon that, hey, that's a large camp that's very popular. You know, I was fine to share it, but it was just one of those things that they saw that I was there and they found a different plan. So I felt like just a one boat trip taking a huge camp, but I guess it wasn't a big deal because, for that trip they were going to go there in the morning and then have that as an event to hike up Blacktail Canyon. So that worked for them as well. So yeah, there you go, some of the big tour groups. So for all these camps, I give you an overhead view and then an on-river view. So that hopefully is enough information to make your decision. Sometimes, though, like across the river is this amazing view, or like a cliff wall that's really close to the river's edge. And, if I went through again, that might be one thing to add, is you add a picture of, hey, I'm going to be at this camp. What does it look like across the river? Like, what is it going to look like when I'm at camp? That can make or break your decision to stay at a camp. But that might have been the point where that was overkill, and I kind of called it where I did. So I was able to I went through like about 4 or 5 different times, kind of adding different elements in. First, I just wanted the rapid overviews, and then the overviews of the camps. Then I found these on-water views of the rapids. From that National Geographic, so I added those in, as well as picking up some of those pictures of people who have actually camped and then took pictures of the camp. That was pretty cool because that really gives you a good view. All right, so Upper Forester, this is one where it's really easy to scout. You can just pop right there. I don't know, it's like a class 4, or what, the scale 4. It's not that big of a deal. But I think the next couple, you might want to get your A game back on. Just not make mistakes, just kind of have fun and hit some of these lines. I think it's Spectre. Spectre is the rapid that's coming up, and man, there's a big wave in there that's kind of lateral. All right, so there's Forester. It's a 5, so there you go. Kind of treat that like a 6 or 7. That was always in my mental process. The 3s and 4s, sure, enjoy yourself, but anything a 5 and above, kind of treat it. It's class 4. You can flip, but you're probably going to do just fine. Yeah, so that Spectre Rapid, I forget what mile it is. I think it's coming up, but yeah, a wave that even there was 2 motor crews going through. You could kind of tell one was the lead boat, then the next one. It was like, oh yeah, it was kind of taking a wonky line through there where you could almost get, even those huge motor rigs, they're still not that wide. So you get sideways and something, you can just flip them like a pancake. Tourists really don't know that probably, or maybe they do give them that. I I'm sure those don't flip that often or ever. But if you mess up, you're going to flip. Oh, I feel like Fossil Rapid is in here twice. I'll really have to check that one, like, yeah, because Fossil's kind of got this two-part. You got the first part, this corner, that's the middle, and then kind of this finish up against this left wall. So there you go. There's Fossil. I'll really have to look at what rapid I was talking about back there. Maybe I mislabeled it, and that was Spectre, but anyway, moving along. If it isn't mislabeled, then... See, there you go. The Randy's Rock Camp. I mean, maybe, you know, you got a cool cliff edge, and there was, with an aerial view, there was quite a few boats there. So if Google has on an aerial view that there is campers there, then that means it's probably a pretty decent place to camp. And here's additional footage of, yeah, that group that actually took really good photos of their camp. So just kind of keep that in mind, that some of those camps might be one of the better ones. So there you go. You got a class, you know, a scale 3 rapid. It's just kind of nice to know where those are, because then they can keep you informed of where you are in the canyon, because it looks like we got a bigger one coming up. That's the only thing you really don't want to do, is be like, oh, is that the big one? It's like, no, you know, you really want to figure out, you really want to be dialed into like where you are in the canyon. And for the Grand, it's really not that big of a deal. It's pretty easy. Alright, so here's Spectre Rapid. And yeah, you have a lot of water pushing up against that outside, that right wall. Yeah, it's a big one. Yeah, there's some meat in there. And it's a 6, you know, probably could be a 7. Yeah, there's just kind of like 1 or 2 waves that are pretty big in there. Maybe that one at the bottom too. Yeah, that one at the bottom. And you're trying to get away from it, maybe you can be like totally sideways. That's what that motor rig was. It was like, well, they were kind of in it. They didn't kind of prep at the start, and they were kind of sideways. So I was like, huh, you might kind of flip. But you know, those are big rigs. No one flip, but it's just, ooh, it's kind of spooky, because if you do flip, you're like, no one's prepared in those big rigs to figure it out. It's going to be pretty chaotic. But yeah, so that gets you juiced up for bedrock. And I didn't really pull in. Like I said, it was pretty hot, but there's this dollhouse. So I really took any photo I could get online of this dollhouse I put in here, because, you know, it's definitely worth, I mean, it's like 100 feet off of the shore, so you might as well check it out. So I think this is the schist. So this type of rock that's real smooth, kind of like granite. Or it's just granite, you know. I kind of forget. But yeah, they were talking about schist flutes, where the river can really kind of erode them just like this, in kind of tapered vertical flutes. Alright, here's the move to make. And don't mess up and just drift left. You know, a lot of people go left not wanting to go left, so definitely give this everything you got. See how there's so much shallow? You know, you can't just start. This is one where you just can't start over on the right-hand side. But what I did was I kind of started too far left. You don't want to start too far left either because you just get sucked over there. By the time you're like, oh, I have all this time to make my move and get momentum. But the second you feel tractor beamed in, like right at the top right there, you're toast. You know, it's like you just really feel pulled. So you really want to make that move as early as possible. Really drive for some of these shallow hits and just be over there. Best you can do. It's just not a worthwhile. I mean, if there was one place that you could probably drown after a flip, it would be this. You know, you just get sucked down. You can get pinned. Even if you get flushed, a lot of footage of people getting 30 seconds, you know, easily 20 underwater. It's just no good, no bueno. All right, yeah. So this is a section of river where you're back into it. You know, you got bedrock, Spectre, bedrock, and then Dubendorf coming up. So Dubendorf, this one, like, you know, you should know anything above a 7. You should watch multiple videos of people going down these rapids, especially river views, and coupling them with these overhead views so you know exactly where you are. Because Dubendorf kind of has this top where you want to be around these rocks. So you can be you're entering left side, and then you can get to the middle. You know, get like trying to catch the eddy behind those shallow rocks up top, right there. And if you kind of catch the eddy behind those, you're good to go. Now you can have some fun lines down that left side, and there's some really big hits. The one major feature that I noticed in this rapid is right at the bottom. Right at the bottom, there's going to be some shallow rocks on shore. Right, is that like as far as the eye can see down there, those rocks jutting out. You don't want to be, that's another place where you can kind of flip your boat. So hit the top how you want, but if you're more right, that's good because now you can just be right of all this. And here's a topo. You can kind of see at the bottom of Dubendorf that, yeah, you really don't want to be caught up on that left side hitting those last waves, flipping your boat. All right, so here's another topo of, you know, big group at this Stone Creek camp. And I'm just making stuff up, but, you know, there might be a cool hike up Stone Creek. I know coming up in the next, like, 20 miles, there is a through hike to Deer Creek. To Deer Creek Falls, where you go up the Tapeats Creek. Go up the Thunder River, Tapeats Creek, over the plateau. So you can have half your group like do the hike and the other half take the boats down and kind of meet you there in the afternoon. All right, here's Tapeats Canyon. So this is it. That's why you probably see a lot of people at Stone Creek because they can easily drop people off at Tapeats Canyon. So you go up Tapeats Creek, which just like a mile up, there's a drainage to the left, and that's the Thunder River coming in. And Tapeats is incredible because this creek is the shortest in the United States. It's like 2 miles long. Like, see where that green patch is? That's basically where it starts. So you go up the main drainage, and then just to that left, just another 100 yards up that left drainage, that's where the Thunder Falls comes out. Just a total spring, churning, the CFS that you see. It's a good couple hundred CFS. When it's cooking, it's probably about, less than 100 CFS. But, you can inner tube it. People take their little... it's got a lot of falls. So there is one YouTube of, someone kayaking it or someone inner tubing it. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, so here's the hike. You can either day hike up to here or go back to your boats. But you get up to this waterfall, and then you can get to the plateau just to the top of the cliffs. And then I provide topos. I just provide aerial images. So there's the whole hike. So Tapeats is on the right-hand side, and now you're going up and over the plateau. So these aerials can help you because you can figure out kind of where you are on that plateau. So there you go. There's kind of crisscrossing trails. You pop this out on your phone. You're like, hey, oh, we got lost a little bit. We need to find that. So now here's dropping into Deer Creek Falls. It's just nice to have a picture of kind of how you enter that and what you're going to be looking for. I know I get easily lost, so yeah, just having a photo is very helpful. Okay, but we're going to get back to Deer Creek Falls. So that was the full trail. Now we're at Tapeats Rapid. And, 6 river miles and whatever is the hike. And one thing with this commentary is I don't have my guidebook with me right now. This is just the knowledge that I know. So, some parts of this where it's just going through camps that I wasn't at, it's just radio silence if I don't have anything to say. But from the guide's perspective, that's fine. It's just, that's the cool thing about this. The more you go over the Grand Canyon, all at once in kind of one sitting, you do that over and over again, and, a river kind of just sinks into your brain just a little bit more. And so it's really helpful from that perspective. You can be just as knowledgeable as someone who's done it 5 times, and you haven't, you've done it once, or... So that was pretty cool, like never doing it, and then, just being able to talk about, rapids coming up and lines in those rapids, from even people that, they would have pulled out the guidebook because they really, they had the boating skill, but, did they know every rapid? No, they didn't need to. And that's okay too. All right, so that was Helicopter Eddie, and that kind of marks this portion below. This is Granite Narrows, the narrowest point in the canyon, so pretty cool. I'm sure somebody's set up a slack line across, but... Because it's so deep and narrow in that, so you got that helicopter eddy, the guidebook definitely says watch out for boil lines. You really don't want to get sucked into that feature. But this is a real cool section of the canyon. Anything that's, narrow canyon walls I really like. Alright, so Deer Creek Falls, so across from Deer Creek Camp. So this gets you, you know, you can probably just boat across if you're across from Deer Creek to access that back and forth. All right, so here's the canyon. From that hike, this is kind of where you'd get spit out. Kind of, you have that kind of lush area up there, and this canyon kind of in the middle. But there, Deer Creek Falls is like a, you know, it's a substantial drop. It's like an 80-foot waterfall. So to get there, you actually hike up that left side. So that's just kind of good to know to, when you get there, like, oh, how do you get up there? That trail's pretty straightforward, though. Yeah, just the left side, very, very well marked. Steep in some sections, but full on trail. But then this is the narrow part. You know, if you don't do, you know, if you're in a group and you take your time, it's gonna really calm nerves. Like, hey, we can all do this. But there's sections where you're just like, holy Toledo, you really can't even. There's a couple sections where you can't walk waist-wise. You actually kind of have to hug the cliffside and kind of shimmy, you know, to make yourself feel a lot safer. And so if you go in groups, take your time. You know, even people that are pretty timid, you know, can do this hike. People really do well with it. If you can do it, I can do it. All right, so here's kind of, you know, I identified before going down. These are some of the coolest camps, you know, the OCs. They just got cool names, the OC, and then the football field. Okay, so that's the OC, so that's probably a really good. But this Poncho's Kitchen's probably one of the, you know, with like a moderate size, even with a large group, that is a cozy corner right there. Got a cool cliff, afternoon shade. I mean, how can you go wrong? Yeah, the Grand Canyon's all about getting out of the elements. You know, if you're rolling early, man, you have shade all day long. You can stay nice and cool. Like I said, I stayed on the river till kind of sundown. But yeah, here's the football field. And then I really wanted to camp in this area, so I camped in this back eddy. Perfect for just kind of like a solo trip. Or a couple boats. But yeah, so that was nice. And then you can just, you know, so I was able to mingle with some of the people, so that was pretty cool to actually, that was the kind of the first time having other people around camp. Didn't feel so isolating. All right, Doris. Doris is a fun one. It's a 4, but yeah, it's definitely feature filled. One to remember. Oh, that's a cool camp. So there you go. That picture really helps you determine, hey, I'd stay at Doris. You know, big cliff wall to stay under. You know, Doris is better than that one just by the looks of it, so there you go. And this one looks really nice too, tucked up against above this rapid. Me personally, I really don't like loud river notes when camping. There was a couple rapids that I kind of camped near, and so that's just good to know. Some people really sleep well. It's like louder the better. That's not me though. Fishtail also, some fun hits. So these are just 4s, but these are probably some of the funner 4s on the river. All right, so we're approaching Kanab Rapid. I really did really pulled out. So this is the whole Kanab drainage, which is really important to kind of know because it starts up at the town of Kanab in Utah. So you can actually, drive to Kanab and actually hike to some really cool sections of the upper Kanab drainage. But here's some footage. Here's some pictures of, if you do go on a longer day hike up the Kanab Creek, it would be probably worth your while. It's just really difficult because you can't camp anywhere near the Kanab drainage. And these features aren't close. I forget if I put kind of their locations of how many miles they are up there. That's one where I just couldn't identify exact locations. So you're just going to have to use your guidebook to, and GPS to maybe figure out, hey, it's a mile up, and then but it'll branch off up that drainage as well. So then you kind of have to go up one side or the other to see some of those features. So yeah, below Kanab Camp, I think you might be able to hike back from there. I'm not quite sure. And it probably adds another mile to the drainage and back. So, definitely put on your hiking boots. Make for some long days to explore that Kanab Canyon. But yeah, all sorts of cool canyons in this section that would be worthy of checking out. So Olo Camp, that looks great. So you could also hike the canyon if it is hikeable. Some have these, depending, some might get cliffed out like that pretty easily, and it's just not worth the risk to try to get up over those lips if you don't have good canyoneering gear or can get up safely. Even a minor break can be a helicopter ride out of this canyon. All right, but yeah, so here's one of the popular ones. Matkadamimba, close enough, right? But yeah, so here's all the upstream pull-in. So I really tried to do my due diligence of trying to find exact locations of those upstream pull-ins, because they say this canyon gets pretty tight with the boats that can fit in. Low water, hey, you got some more options. And then, so see that trail on the bench? Now you have other options to hey, we can actually, that's what the rock pile looks like at the bottom. But, hey, we can park there and climb some of the cliffs. So that's in the guidebook too. I just really wanted to show a lot of good photos, and if it's all congested, maybe you can come down here and camp and then go check out that drainage. So if I get back to the Grand Canyon, especially with a bigger group, I would definitely like to do some of these hikes. I'd even do it solo and do some more hiking. You can still do it safely, one foot in front of the other, really taking your time. Treating the hiking like rafting, no mistakes, right? But it was just too hot, It was just unbearable, and I couldn't switch out of my dry suit very fast. I just didn't want to, so... And I boogied through this, because if I could make if I had large rapids that were coming up, so the next big one coming up is Upset. I was definitely going to get through those. Yep, before taking a camping break. So I actually camped below Upset on some cool ledges. That's coming up. But yeah, so here's Upset. So especially running by myself and with your group, you got to kind of make those decisions whether you want to. Is your group dialed to run some of these rapids in the morning? you know, or are they just not dialed in where you'd rather run some of these in the afternoon or evening? So here's Upset. I had a really good line down the left side. It was a little higher water. It felt clean. You know, even the big hits at the bottom didn't feel like holes. But yeah, if it was even lower water, I would have done a lot more. I would have scouted. I just really didn't need. I don't know. I probably could have and needed to on this. I just didn't. I just went for it. Just because I was kind of aware that those holes are on the bottom right, and especially at lower water, yeah, you wouldn't want to go into any of those, low water holes where they're steep and violent. You know, just a violent flip. But this is about the same water level that I hit it at. You know, so just big crushing waves. Really fun rapid. I recommend going down that left side. It's excellent. But obviously, that's just for the one water level that I hit it at. Everything's different at different levels. Yeah, some of these I had to pull as many photos as I could because this is the Upset Hotel Camp. You know, question mark. You know, did my best to figure out where the heck they were talking about. Some of these are like, oh yeah, you know, hike up a bench, and you can, you know, from the river level, you can probably see where those ledge camps are a little bit better. But yeah, from here on down, so this is a downstream view of the ledge camps, upper ledges. And this is totally where you want to, you know, bring your cots, you know, you're kind of sleeping on rock. And there is some sand that you can probably get flat. But it's a very neat experience. Yeah, as long as people are prepared. Like, if everyone has cots and you're going in the heat of whatever, that's the way to go for desert boating. You know, kind of friend introduced to me to that. But I feel comfort. I need to figure out how to get to sleep sometimes. And so I'm a tent camper, and I get way better sleep in a tent. So I'm always looking for sand, I guess. But I had to do one ledge camp. It's coming up. I didn't do these. But yeah, so there's some good footage of kind of a unique camping experience. And very cool section of the river. You know, highly recommend camping in these ledges because it's just really tucked in. Just an excellent feel. So yeah, this Tricking Waterfall must always be going. You know, very easy feature to boat by and see, so that's pretty cool. Alright, so now we're getting into these last chance camps. So this means that Havasu is coming up. So a lot of people will hike up Havasu. You definitely have to pay. So when you get there, you know, you'll come across rangers, and you might want to figure that out before you go. Because you know you can't camp up there, that's for sure, if you hike all the way to like Havasu Falls. But yeah, so these are the camps that you can camp before doing that. So you know you wake up early, get to Havasu, park your boats, have like an epic day. It's 3 miles to like Beaver Falls, which is an excellent swimming area. You know, if that's all you do, awesome. But yeah, if more people want to go all the way to Mooney Falls just to check out that, you know, it's there. It's just gonna make a really long day of hiking. So I would recommend just go to Beaver, swim, have fun, make a fun day, and then you know, definitely put in the lottery, and then sometime else hike down to Havasu and get the whole camping experience, which is worthwhile. And that was just from people that, because I did a permit, got to Havasu on a separate trip and hiked down the Havasu drainage and got to do that camping experience. And then you get like 3 days there. That's it. That's all you get. So it's very short-lived, but it's a very good vacation. Some people use 1 day to hike this whole thing all the way to the river and back. But it's exhausting. It's for like dedicated hikers. Wake up early, get back tired, right? And so that's the same thing you would do from this drainage. If you hiked all the way to Mooney Falls, you're just going to be really tired when you get back. But it is worth it if you do set it up and have the time. And some people can just chill at Beaver Falls, which is an excellent swim spot. You'll definitely have company from the people that hike down to Beaver from the campground. Yeah. But Beaver Falls is it's at least you get a destination swim spot. Excellent. And this, I think this creek is actually perfect temperature. As long as the weather is not cold out, it's excellent to swim in. And that's what you don't get with the Colorado. The Colorado is just a bucket of ice coming out of the dam. So just know that man, even bathing, even lower down, it only changes like a degree every 10 miles. So it's cold. And so it's nice to get these swimming opportunities. So there you go. I mean, that is a nice location. So, yeah. But yeah, if you get to Mooney, there you go. You can do the little hike above Mooney Falls, which is really technical, kind of spooky. It's one of those things that you're just like, how the heck did all these people get down, do this hike down to Mooney? Because that section of rock completely exposed. Your whole body is up against the rock, and you're holding on to a chain rope. So at least you have 2 chains kind of going all the way down. And yeah, definitely spooky. And then if you're like, oh, I want to go somewhere where you can actually like buy some goods, during the peak season, they do sell like food items and some of the huts around the area. But that's still, another mile or 2 past the falls, so you kind of have to be reasonable with your day trip because you can't camp there. It's just a down and back. All right, now, so let's say you did that epic day. These are called first chance, second chance, because, you just want to find any sort of camp and crash if you try to do an epic day at Mooney. So that's what these camps are for. See if anyone's there. All right, 158.7. So this is the one I camped at. You kind of had a mixture of both. There was sand that... I still think I put my tent on the sand, but you get the ledge feel here. So you're still camping on a ledge, really tucked in. I really enjoyed this camp. Yeah, so you can kind of walk down this ledge. Just makes for an enjoyable experience with the water just lapping up right against the ledge. All right, so you kind of got some options here. I mean, well, this is from that camp that I was. I made it past lava. You know, I thought I was just gonna have an easy day, but it was just kind of one of those decisions that you make. You know, there wasn't too much for rapids, and I got to lava towards the end of the day. It was kind of later. I ran into a group. I was able to set safety, or have safety below lava, so it just kind of worked out. And kind of went with my, you know, goal of hitting the major rapids after being fully warmed up. You know, even in the evening. I'd rather hit a rapid in the evening than right in the morning. All right, Tug Up Canyon, another canyon you could do some hiking. So I did not explore that one, but there you go. Yeah, that seems like a pretty cool place to camp out, hike up. And National Camp, you know, National Canyon. So uh, before lava, this would be a great area to do a layover. You know, especially if you've already burned through some of your days and you didn't really plan layovers. Um, that's what happened to me. Is just like, you know, you're allotted so many days, and I just wanted to be on the water as much as possible. But it made the kind of the trip go pretty fast. So um, this would have been a perfect spot to have a layover day, maybe catch some afternoon shade under those cliffs. So just kind of be looking at that. And that's the other, you know, to have this digital document on your trip, you know, you can kind of make those quick changes when your trip's not going identical to the plan that you had set out. And the other element to that is once you pass lava, you know, for the most part, you feel kind of, you know, done with your trip. You kind of went past the largest rapid, got through safely or whatnot. So that kind of plays an effect on, you know, you're probably just more likely to boogie from there on out. If you take you out at Diamond, I went all the way down to Pierce Ferry. But that's kind of the mindset. Once you get past that huge crux, then you're kind of just maybe more apt to just leave the canyon instead of you know, having a few days, you know, before that crux. You know, really building that anticipation, I guess. All right, that's a nice view of this camp. Great evening walks. Check out the drainage, and just really tucked in with those canyon walls. So, definitely a good mental note. And I am fascinated with these drainages, so I always do the full overview of like, hey, that's the drainage. You kind of get a gist of what the erosion is. Yeah, that's a really good shot. And then yeah, so these on-water camp pictures are really important to, like, oh yeah, you really get a feel for what that camp would be like, that section of canyon. Um, and there's no bad place in the Grand Canyon, but it just gives you like, hey, what do you want? What are you after? Um, is that going to be, compared to that one, maybe not the best look or best camp. Yeah, there's plenty of camps in the guidebook that are small, brushy, maybe washed out. Definitely not first choice, but hey, good to know. And then here's the other thing. You might be in monsoon season, or in you're going down the river where it's been raining every single day, and you're just not comfortable camping like right there in this camp, where it's a total washout waiting to happen. And any of those fans, there are fans for a reason. Like once you get like a flooded coming through there, it's gonna spread out through the entire area, and if that happens, it's dangerous and also time to peace out. All right, we're getting pretty close to lava, so most people will probably choose some of these camps, above lava and, run it in the morning, but still, I don't know. Yeah, you know, there's no bad way. But yeah, I just wouldn't want to wake up, get a mile on the river and have to run lava, when your body's not warmed up. Even if in the evening time you're would be more exhausted, or where you'd really have to conserve energy if you did flip and figure things out, it's going to be harder if you're obviously more exhausted. So that is the catch 22 there. I ran Horn in the evening. I also ran Upset in the evening, and then kind of ran Lava. Lava was pushing evening on me, but since I ran into that group, that was the kind of the confidence boost to be like, "Yep, we're gonna do this." I definitely took my time to scout. That's for sure. I'm sure half the group got pretty impatient waiting because one of the really nice guides said, "Hey, we're gonna wait for you." So he made that decision for his entire group, and I know how that goes, where it's just like, "Why are we waiting?" But all of them got to see me go through, so that was at least kind of fun to see a 10-foot boat go through there, and so it worked out. But man, I probably took Well, I just had to get my boat ready, fully pumped. I just wanted to make sure everything was ready. So, probably easily 15 minutes. It could have been 20 minutes of just sitting there waiting. I took my time, but sometimes that's just what you got to do. Don't rush it. Make sure that you're prepared. Now, you can scout too long, that's for sure. Like, if you go to a scout, don't be mingling with other people. Like, figure out your line and, leave it at that. If you have a question for someone else, that's different. Get your question answered. But yeah, this scouting as a group is, spending an hour at a scout. That's something that if you're the leader of your trip, you can kind of coach and say, hey, this is the allotted amount of time to scout. Great. If you have questions, if you need to go re-scout it, that's fine too, right? Where you kind of forget while you're walking to your boat, your line, that's fine. But just not having a huge conversation at scouts where you're not even paying attention. You're more maybe paying attention to what the group has to say about the rapid, not what you think about it, finding your markers, and really being on the attack. Or it's kind of plenty of eddy below lava to group up, especially if you get through, you can kind of pull over. But just know you have this lower lava, Falls Rapid, and it's kind of pushed up against the cliffs. And yeah, you want to have things cleaned up by then. If people swim, you want to get them back in. But yeah, probably this camp's pretty popular. The group that I was with, I think they pulled into this below lava, and it's probably recommended because you have that sound of lava above you while you're camping. You made it through, probably a pretty sweet little camp. Because things do kind of get spread out down here fairly quick. So I actually kind of just picked a camp that was half a mile or a quarter mile downstream from there. It's not on here. So just know that there's sometimes just camps where you can just pull over anywhere. So that's in between this one and that one. But yeah, moving on, here's some of the more camps down here. See, it gets kind of spread out, but yeah, so that's something. If you get through lava and it's towards the end of the day and you can camp right below it, then it's just a real feel-good feeling, probably a good day to celebrate, and a good campsite. And it's just the nature of it. The canyon opens up, so, just a little bit, and there's fewer rapids from here on down. Right after this is the Whitmore Wash, and a lot of people helicopter out on the private trips. Even if they went on like a, so here you go, here's the helipad sites. So the people will helicopter out, then the guides will just take out the empty boats. So that's kind of how they run it, whether it's an oar trip or a motor rig. Unless you paid to go down. So what you're paying for on the river is basically you're just paying for a day, and it's honestly not that bad. It can be as low as like $300 bucks, and you get 3 meals, $300 a day. Yeah. 300 to 400 probably for trips these days. The cost per day. But yeah, even that camp kind of looks, overgrown. Canyon widens out. The feel of it widens out. So I just want to really express that again. It's just the nature of it. It's just kind of how the geology works, But there's a few cool rapids between here and Diamond Creek. And again, I don't know much about the hikes, so there could be some great layover days between here and Diamond. I'm just not sure. I just know kind of how the feel of the river feels, so. All right, so you get basalt. So basalt's pretty cool because it's kind of like like lava popping out right out of the ocean. Basically, get basalt crystallizes in those columns, so it's pretty cool. Yeah, igneous rock, right? Not sedimentary and not metamorphic, so it's just. But it's just fresh. So you get, yeah, basalt's kind of fresh igneous rock compared to like granite or schist. It's like, basically cauldroned into a batholith. Still igneous, but just all freshly baked, but just under huge amounts of pressure in mountain ranges. So it's kind of like all of Idaho. But even up in Montana, where I am, you have people climbing, schist as well. Because it's so smooth, it's slippery, I think, for climbing. It's just the nature of it. But yeah, basalt, that's definitely central Idaho. So it's kind of cool to get that in Arizona. And this is where you actually, yeah, so you just went through, I kind of forget the layering, but you just have, fresh volcanic basalt rock right on top or right next to, kind of layer caked onto older granite. Or I might have to step back. So as you go layer by layer in the Grand Canyon, the rocks get older, but until you get to this volcanic, it just pops out fresh. So then you get fresh new rock, just really close to old basement rock. So that's what's called the Great Unconformity. Yeah, I think it was this day after lava, that full day, there just wasn't much of. Like, I didn't record any rapids, so I don't know if there was none or I'd passed that, but didn't have a rapid that day. All right, so I think these photos on river are very important to be like, hey, are these going to be good camps? Just from the visual perspective. So that one looked decent, but honestly, just down, I would definitely recommend the canyon where the Book of Worms is. I forget the name of the canyon, but that's where I stayed, and it was excellent. It was a very cool campsite. It kind of stormed, and this other group rolled in. I didn't mind them camping, but yeah. So that was the kind of the other time that I got to camp with a group. So that was excellent. I really enjoyed my solo experience. That's kind of how my mind works. I don't mind the whole dinner party thing every once in a while. It's like, that's excellent for sure. But I kind of struggle mentally with large groups, just from actually having mental illness. So it's just as a boater, I have to take that. I very much have to take that in consideration on these multi-day trips. Make sure I get sleep. Make sure yep. Because I try to take care of my mental health very well. Try to stay off all meds, kind of do it a clean approach, but it can make it more tricky. Really have to focus on reducing stress levels, not getting too excited, getting sleep. So probably not expecting me talking about that during this, but hey, I'm always bringing it up, reducing stigma. Here it is, Parshant Camp. If that said right, but yeah, this canyon. The hike up is only about a half a mile to get to the Book of Worms, and that's plenty. But yeah, really cool feature where, kind of that column rock fell, and then you get to see all these like little worms crawling through the rock, totally petrified. But yeah, real nice camp. Big area. Highly recommend. And there's the hike to the Book of Worms. There they are. Okay, but this next day, I camped there, so this next day for me has 209 Mile Rapid. So that's another one that can flip boats, which is significant and important. Because some of these large rapids, you take so much time and effort to figure them out that, you're probably not going to flip a boat. And this one is kind of like, I never knew about 209. But it's good to know about because you want to treat it like it's going to flip everyone. And it's not too hard to avoid. But it's one of those that you just have to be on the left side. Make your move, get away from the hole. You could punch the hole if you want, but if you're a hair off, you're probably going to tip over. Oh yeah, so that pull out just that overhead view. Some of these big bends where you have like one drainage kind of meets another drainage on the other side. This is a spring. They said it's a quarter mile up. I made a mark there. Go ahead and find it. That didn't seem worth my time, I guess. But that brings up, where can you get water? There was water at Phantom Ranch. It said not potable and don't use it. But then I talked to everyone on the river, like, oh yeah, that's all we just filled it up there. It's not a big deal. So I don't know. I kind of took the sign at face value. Oh, here we go. Oh, this is Kanab Rapid. Yeah, 205. So yeah, another good juicy one in there. I think Kolb's pretty good. Not too stout, but fun. But yeah, so you can Get water, Phantom Ranch. Maybe get water at that spring if you really want to go on an adventure. I mean, if you got those 18-foot boats, I think you just bring all your water, you know, for your entire trip, if you're able to. And then maybe fill up at the halfway point at Phantom, no matter what the sign says, potable or not. All right, here's 209 miles, so you got plenty of time to set up and look at this thing, but you really actually want to be over on the right-hand side and then use all that momentum to the left. So hug that right bank, but not too far. Yeah, or you just go down the left side. It's actually, there's nothing to bounce you too much. You can kind of just go left, stay left, go left. Yep, so you kind of get more open canyons. Okay, so that was an overview to 209, but here's 209. So this is kind of what it's going to look like from the top view. Really, you can just be over on that left side the entire time. Yeah, but yeah, that thing will flip you. You know, and again, only one part of it's going to be real gnarly, so if you're over there, definitely, you know, don't be running away and hitting it sideways. I mean, if you got to plug it, turn your boat, square up. If you hit the point of no return, right? And then just want to say, if I make updates to this digital document, I will. I'll put it in the description. You know, if I added more pictures. Oh, here's another scale 3. So at least something to keep you busy or keep you occupied down there between the flats. But yeah, so I'll keep that in the description if I ever, you know, add anything more in here. Pumpkin Springs could be a great camp. The springs itself is kind of weird. It's just a weird feature. It doesn't make it like a glamorous place. Actually, kind of less, because it's kind of just disgusting water. You really won't want to sit in it. But there you go. But yeah, so here's from the camp, and then those, yeah. So whatever, yeah, these, yeah. Tapete ledge hole hike. So yeah, the river created these holes, so that could be cool. So that gives you an overview of how to hike back there if you want. Or on the way to Pumpkin, you can just kind of check them out riverside. So keep that in mind. This Three Springs is pretty cool look, looking at, you know, just kind of the canyons that are kind of are inaccessible, so that's kind of one of them. Turn your boat sideways, look up that thing as you float by. And that might be the last big one for people taking out at Diamond Creek. You know, it's a scale 5, so there you go. Yeah, big canyon, but kind of just open country. So, you know, afternoon shade gets harder to find. That's for sure. Now, I think I stayed at this upper 220-mile camp. I kind of stayed with that other group. This was their last night, so that was pretty cool to have kind of their celebration night and hang out with them. Yeah, and at this point, you're just finding your last camp and then a short day, making sure you can get to Diamond Creek at the right hour. Make sure you can get your shuttle and be all taken care of. Like I said, I don't know if there's any more big rapids, that's for sure. But if you go past Diamond, you got 2 big ones. You know, with Killer Fang kind of being the more consequential one. So there you go. There's 6 miles from Diamond. Pretty nice camp. View of Diamond Peak. All right, and so your last chance above Diamond to actually get a camp. So, that's where these digital documents come in nice, because you can, hey, is it worth it? That last camp didn't seem too worth it, if that's going to be your last, just to make it close. Might as well find something that's enjoyable, right? But all right, here's your takeout. Diamond Creek takeout's pretty straightforward. Now this drainage I really enjoy because it's such a knife coming through. And this is, if this whole Grand Canyon kind of did just kind of blow out, and that Diamond Creek is very fascinating. There's a few that I would talk about. It's just, it's just kind of interpretation of kind of what you see, but it's just my interpretation. But it's kind of fascinating, some of these, yeah. In general, there's kind of like a whole nother drainage. So downstream of Diamond, on the river left, like where you hit Spencer Canyon, there's kind of a whole nother drainage over, So if it was a slow erosion process of inland seas coming in and out, you would have separate drainages that formed before a main drainage kind of took over. So that's kind of what I noticed, kind of makes it interesting. All right, Diamond Creek Rapid. This kind of just got to wave to everyone. So I got to continue down all by myself. And, when you're by yourself, it's hard to take a layover day, 100-degree heat. You just kind of... I got into a routine. I wanted to be on the water all day, camp, enjoy enjoy the time out there, get a hike in. But yeah, having a full layover day just wasn't my style. Yeah, kind of two waterfall features. You have like Travertine Canyon, and then you have like the Travertine Falls. So I kind of forget from the guidebook if they're like in two different locations. So you have this Travertine Canyon, so we'll see if there's any photos of that. So there you go. So these might be from Travertine Canyon to get some of these waterfalls. And I had the opportunity to camp there. I just didn't. If I did things differently, I would have took my 2 days. You're only allowed like a certain amount of days in this section, so you kind of have to plan for it. But I think that was on the list. I could have stayed there and got to Separation, where I stayed at Separation Canyon, 10 miles downstream. All right, and so here's Travertine Falls. So kind of two different features here, and another camp. And I should have stayed. I don't even remember boating by Travertine Falls, so I really should have made a day of that. It's just 100-degree heat. I just really had to keep myself cool on the water. All right, we're approaching 232 Mile Rapid, or see if I get this right, or 231 is the first one, right? But this rapid is substantial. So Killer Fang is at 232, let's say, and this one's at 231. And it's kind of long. It's got like an upper section, and then you think, oh, it's no big deal. But this lower section, you don't want to be too far left. There are some rocks, some holes. It's pretty easy down that right side, but I kind of played around too much over on the left, and it made it more spicy. So, kind of more than I wanted, actually. So So yeah, so this 231 is the only one I really didn't pay attention to, and that left side kind of big, so it's kind of had to get away from that. And Killer Fang, shoot, you can scout it, because this is a must-make move, and you have to get over the wave train, and if you don't get over the wave train, you're going right for the fangs, and so it's an early setup. So you want to hit the left side over there as best as possible. So boom, you're on the left side of that wave train. So you really, that first hit, you can be all in. Try to flip your boat, no big deal, right? Easy run out because you'll already be to the left side. But yeah, if you go in weak sauce, you're just going to be right in that wave train, not going to cross it, and you're going to clip along at 10 miles an hour with a 18-foot boat and get totally flipped on the fangs. It could be very violent. Alright, and then there's just some bonus rapids, These are all pretty straightforward, pretty fun. There's only a few of them because Lake Mead, even at its lower level, still kind of makes these rapids subdued. Just basically because Lake Mead had a higher level and it put a bunch of silt, so all the silt kind of settles out in these rapids and just kind of takes the punch away from them. And so this lower section below Diamond, from mile 225, let's say, to 280, is kind of in two different sections. I would say the first 15 miles are awesome. All the way down to Separation Canyon. You can camp at that Travertine Falls, both those camps. And I camped at Separation. Any of these camps in between are probably excellent. But after Separation, it is the apocalypse. Like, literally, the camps are awful. But there are some okay ones. I didn't have good enough pictures to actually figure out what would be a good camp. And so, yeah, my last day was just miserable. So if you do this section from Diamond down, definitely spend as much time in that first 15 miles. I think you're able to camp like once at Travertine, and I think at 240, from there down, you're able to camp another time. And then from 240 to 260, and then after then for another 20 miles, from that last 20, you're able to camp one more. So that was confusing, but you're potentially only allowed to camp 3 times, let's say, if not just 2. But you really want to pick some good camps. And so earlier the better. The second you go by Separation, it's the apocalypse. Alright, so here it is, Separation Canyon. Okay, right in the middle of your screen there, that's Separation to the right. Kind of splits off into a Y as you go up it, but that's the one Powell, or 3 men from the Powell expedition hiked out. obviously perished. So there is the epitaph or plaque for their death on the canyon wall. But yeah, really cool drainage. When you're looking up, you're just looking like 50 miles, it looks like. So yeah, that view is just, it's striking. Just super cool. Alright, I still included if it had a rapid name, but look, there's no rapid. So, I mean, even separation's not a rapid. So, like, the last one was like Nice, and it was, you know, probably hardly anything. Alright, so it's not total apocalyptic already, right? Still got some camps. But what happens is the silt ledges just start to form, and you actually can't even get up out of the river like in flat area where camping is desirable. But I guess that doesn't happen for another 5 to 10 miles, let's say, because Spencer Canyon might be a good place to also camp. But yeah, so there you go, kind of higher benches. Spencer would be one where you guys have to like get your gear up onto the bench potentially. So there you go. Not too steep, but still, you got to get your stuff up there. So keep that in mind. Yeah, still some good looking canyons down there though. So but you know, from this point out, you got like 30 miles, 32 miles, let's say, 35 from your last camp, up to 40. So you have to camp once. So, you know, from yeah, from Separation Canyon down, it's to Pierce, it's 40 miles. Some people just kind of float and do an overnighter and just don't camp. So that's one option, right? Kind of float all day, float all night. And I was thinking about that. Separation Canyon, I was like, well, if I float all night, I'll get there in the morning, right? You know, at some point. But I just couldn't do it. So here's where, yeah, the silt terraces start to form where you don't have any beaches. You just have brush all the way down. The bank is super, you know, anywhere that's wet is like completely slick. And okay, so here's Sandbar Alley. So I'm glad I included some of these, you know, photos. Are you going to use them? You know, probably not, but at least you might pop them out and see to get around some of these features. Especially at lower water. I had kind of higher water, so it wasn't that big of a deal. But if you get stuck once, you might be like, I'm not going to get stuck again. Because you can see it in that Sandbar Alley. If you do get stuck on that left side and have to like walk your boat all the way down the sandbar, that ain't no good. Instead you should go back upriver and find the channel to the side. So just keep that in mind. And you think, oh, these drainages coming in might be a good place to camp. There's no camping. It's just a huge terrace. You know, that terrace is 15 feet tall. and you're not climbing up it. So that last photo of Quartermaster Canyon, potentially there was maybe a small space to camp down there. Or at least it was kind of flat near the water. And these camps are just kind of awful looking, so just tons of overgrowth growing out of the old silt. Yeah, these heli sites, kind of from the river, all you see is these boat docks, but, it's kind of neat boating by. Yeah, the Hualapai, they basically, they own all the land on that left side of the Grand Canyon, especially from South Rim down, so they have all the, they run trips down this stretch in jet boats, and they do kind of day trip, they'll do a lunch stop at the water, at, the waterfalls, and then just buzz out to Pierce Ferry and drop people off. So if you're in the Grand Canyon area and you're able to sign up for that day trip, I definitely recommend it. It's going to be a perfect, $300 day, get lunch, maybe some, I think they even give you like a little sack breakfast on the bus ride down to Diamond Creek. So definitely get more of the Grand Canyon adventure than just, watching it from South Rim. And I don't mind the jet boats or the motor rigs, because they make it affordable for people to actually go down the Grand Canyon, where else it's just not. I mean, you're going to be in six grand compared to $2 per person, and if you're trying to take you and your significant other or trying to get any family members down there, the price is just going to add up too much. Yeah, it's kind of fascinating. So I took some of my personal photos from the river of this skywalk. So just kind of a little dot in the sky, but you can see the horseshoe from the river. It was too far away for me to like wave. I guess I could have waved a paddle, and probably would have saw me down there. But you never know. And this bat cave, I was just like, well. Yeah, who knew that there was so much guano in this bat cave and you could use it as fertilizer, blah, blah, blah. But they put a whole tramway into the cave to mine it. I think, fertilizer, because if you got good fertilizer, then you can grow kind of anything. So it's just high-valued stuff. Yeah, kind of some interesting features down in this lower canyon. At least some things to keep you occupied while you're just floating out. This section, it doesn't look like it's moving at all, and if you have any wind, it probably isn't. But luckily I was able to kind of drift and paddle about 3 miles an hour. So, to do the whole 40, it's going to take 12 hours, of just, if you do it all night. And it's probably just a little bit slower than, You know, I might be mistaken on that. It might be 2 miles an hour. But it goes, you know, so it's not that bad. Alright, so here's one of the camps I stayed at, I think. I'll correct it. But yeah, it was just absolutely awful. It's just super slippery near the bank. Everything gets muddy. Ugh. And that was not desirable, right? So having some of these other, you know, like this would have been way better. It looks like you can actually, you know, have some space to yourself. The other one was just in the thicket. So there you go. That's hands down tons better than the one I chose. So I just chose the worst. So it's just nice to know that there are okay places. That would be one of them. It's okay. And then here's this Columbine Falls. Now you can't camp within like 300 feet from the falls. But I did, you know, I used Google to figure out how far 300 feet is. That's 300 feet. Or 300 yards. So there you go. So you can camp. If there is camping kind of on that, above that picture right there, you're good to go. You just can't camp 300 yards to the falls. So there you go. That might be a pretty cool experience and have that falls as your backdrop. Alright, Rampart Caves. Yeah, there's some history here. Kind of forget what the history was on that, but worth taking a look. And finally, the Grand Wash Cliffs. That's kind of that white line going across the screen right there. You really can't see them approaching, but you can see once you get around them. So you can look back at the Grand Wash Cliffs. So that's kind of on the, you know, the side of them. So just right at that corner. And here might be, this is 1 mile from the takeout. You know, this could be a great place to have a camp. You know, you got a super long sandy beach. If you timed it right and could have a nice evening party, awesome. It's just weird because you're 1 mile from the takeout. You should probably plan your trip to actually just get to the takeout and get the heck out of there. But that could be a camp to actually slow that pace. To be like, hey, we got one more night on the river. Let's enjoy this. Get to the takeout. Have all day to get to where you need to be. Instead of making that a rush. And plenty of room at the takeout, especially. Okay, and so here's Pierce Ferry Rapid. I totally forgot to go hike down. I was just kind of really excited to be done with the whole trip, right? So I packed up and just pieced out. I forgot to hike down and take a look at this. Because this is an ever-changing rapid, you know, kind of the class 5 in nature. It's just got a lot of funneled water into a couple quick drops, so there you go. I want to extend my thanks to you and the other viewers who have found this helpful. Leave a comment or suggestion on other rivers that you'd want to see a digital guide to. I have a few in mind of my own, as it is a way for me to run the river multiple times before going down for the first, or just getting solid on the rivers that I've already run. Alright, thanks again. Alright, a little bonus. So I went through and got all the aerial photos of each page of the guidebook. I took down the Guide to the Colorado River in the Grand Canyon, the Lee's Ferry to South Cove 5th edition. That was in 2017, so if new editions have new information, keep that in mind. So any other updates, I'll let you know in the description if I put those in. One piece of information I wanted to give was, so not necessarily these photos, but the entirety of the photos. There's like over 5,000 because I doubled up. So each of the photos has, you know, one with a label and one without. The one with the label is in Photoshop and can be printed at 8.5 by 11. It'll take up the full page. So that's good to know if you want a hard copy of, you know, some of the harder rapids. You can have that at the ready. But when you look, but what that did was made the photo smaller. And if you're just looking at these on your phone, having them as big as possible is best. So I left the other photo in because that'll take up the entire screen. So that's the reason there. All right, I want to take these last moments to kind of go over some of the, first day. Getting checked out at the put-in and on the water is so important because there's so many things that can make that, not work and make you scramble. So I just want to go over maybe 2 or 3 of them. So, it's a good thing for everyone to print out their own trip regulations, so they just have it. The trip leader is the only one that's needing to do that. But that trip regulations, it's about, 30 pages. You need to go through it with a fine-tooth comb. And I want to make a separate video on that first day because at the put-in, the ranger hands you another sheet of paper, and that's your checklist. And there's only a dozen things on that. So out of the entire trip regulations that you take with you, you're getting checked off on about a dozen things. The most important is those PFDs. Is that if any part of your PFD is torn or, like a buckle is slightly cracked or broken, that PFD cannot check out. So you can't take that one, and you still have to have the minimum number of PFDs, one for every person, and a spare. And if you're short one, that means you're going to be in a pinch. You're basically not going to be able to go until you get that fixed. So Flagstaff 4 hours away is, kind of what people do. They scramble to Flagstaff, get the gear they need, and get back. Now, if you use a outfitting company for your 18-foot boats, use like Moe and Kopi, they're going to provide, hopefully they'll have some of those extra items. They've done this, they outfit people, so you're pretty much good to go. But as a private, if you're running a private trip, it's really important that you have all these things, and that might be for a separate video. Things that apply to everyone that you might just glance over in the trip regulations are at that put-in, you can only camp one night, and you have to camp on the water. You can't camp in your vehicle. I wanted to camp in my van, and that was kind of a no-go, even though that was, kind of a look the other direction. So some things will stop your trip completely. I was surprised that I was, it was like, oh, okay, well, if you need to, but it's just good to know the rules so that you're prepared when you get there. But I would say the one piece of advice is get there early the day before, get all your stuff checked out, and if by noon, you miss something, then you can get to Flagstaff before 5 p.m. If it's a must-make item that you have to get and get back in time. So that might be it for another video, but I definitely want to do a video about checking off and getting on the Grand Canyon. So look for that. That'll cover it with the maps, so thanks so much.